Writing from the soul is the mother of all invention, and 21 Grams is back for another season of this exploration. We will look into the artist and the art they create. Except, this season we're adding the questionnaire, invented by the great Bernard Pivot, to go even deeper. They say 21 grams is the weight of the soul, and this show is the scale. So now here's your host for 21 grams, Joe Compton. Yes, hello everybody. We're back with another episode of 21 grams, and I'm here with the perennial 21 gram guest. I mean, he's done every single season we've done, so it's really great that he signed up to do this one. Mr. Bobby Nash, how are you, sir?
I am good. Does that means I'm like the Don Rickles of 21 grams? Is that?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was the first. That was the first like comedian I could think of that did a lot of talk shows.
Yeah, he was always a regular fixture on Carson. So
yeah, I think he was one of those guys too that if somebody canceled, that was your go-to. Call Rickles.
Exactly. Yeah. So for those who don't know you, which I don't know many people out there who wouldn't, because you're awesome and you people I know we run in the same circles, but tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Bobby Nash. I write stuff. I do novels, comic books, short stories, audio books, full cast audio dramas is kind of a recent thing in recent years. I've dabbled in a little screenplay work here and there, but mostly I'm known for novels, short stories, and comics. I do a lot of action heavy stuff, a lot of crime drama, crime fiction. But then I also do media tie-in stuff, corporate work, get to work with companies, characters, or do things for various publishers around the world. So it's a fun and interesting career.
Yeah.
It definitely keeps me on my toes. Yeah. So
nice. We got a nice little audience growing for us. We got Anita, we got Vanessa, we got Tiffany, and Vanessa says Bobby does get around.
He does. He's quick. Not quick-witted, but quick.
He's nimble like the night.
Yeah.
I'm curious a little bit about, when did you really decide that this is what you wanted to do? I don't think we've ever had this conversation about this. So when did you feel like you really knew that this was it for you, that this was the thing you were going to do? And was it was the happenstance getting a first corporate gig that kind of did that for you?
Well, when I was a kid, I had this. My first dream as a kid was to be a scientist. I was very into, especially space exploration, learning about those type of things, how rockets work. I was really just a nut for that stuff. Then I realized that math was a very strong prerequisite. And math and I don't always see eye to eye. So I realized that the sciences might not be for me. But I also like to draw. And so at one point I learned that, wait, drawing comic books is a job. People get paid for that. That became my goal. Nice. Turns out I can't draw that well. But I had started writing comics for me to draw. And so other artists were like, you're actually pretty good at that part. And a buddy of mine had given me some great advice where he was like, if you were to focus on one or the other, you will get better at it. As it is right now, you're trying to do both. And I think you're hurting yourself. And I at that point in my life, I didn't always take advice well, but I guess I was in the right frame of mind that day because it penetrated. And he was right. And so I focused on the writing, and a few years later, I sold my first comic book script. So he might have been onto something. And so from there, it was just, it was, wanting to tell stories very naively, thinking, just write a story, you tell it and you're good. And this was in the pre-do-it-yourself days. So there was a lot of submitting, writing. Yeah, for the longest time, I never knew how to finish a story because I only wrote the beginnings, submitted it, they passed on it. I never had to come up with an ending. So the first time I sold something and had to was like, oh crap, I don't know how to end this because I never thought that far. But yeah, so I started that way. I did some local stuff early on. I did some. Had some friends that were doing some indie books. I did some work for them. I did some comic strips for a local kids magazine, which I did for 12 years. It was once a month, but it's 12 years. And so that kind of buoyed me in doing it. I did my own little fanzine for a while. And then I managed to, after a while, I managed to get a publisher that was like, okay, we'll let you try something. And so I did a tryout for them. They liked it. And suddenly I was a professional comic book writer. And then, as anybody who's ever been, before you have published work, when you're talking to editors and publishers trying to get work, and you go up and say, hi, my name is Bobby. I'm a writer. The first question they ask is, oh, what have you written? And if your answer is, well, I'm working on my first, you can literally see the glaze go up over people's eyes because they've heard that story. But once you have something in your hand, oh, what have you written? And you say, I wrote this. And you put a book in their hand, you've bought yourself a minute because they're going to look at the cover. They're going to flip it over. They're going to look at the back cover. They might flip through and read a chapter or a page or a paragraph or something. But one of the things that I learned from that experience, and from at that point, editors will talk to you, was that one of the big things that publishers and editors look for, yes, can you write is important. What are your ideas are important. How you do it is important. But one of the most important things to publishers is, will you finish the project? And I realized that they would deal with a lot of people who would start and never finish. Even after they offered them the job, wouldn't finish. And I was like, I don't get that. If you get the job, you do, this is the job I've wanted forever. If I get the job, I'm going to do my best to keep the job.
Yep.
And so, yeah, so that became kind of the starting point, was doing comics. And my plan was, I'd been happy to write comics forever, just doing comics. And I still love comics and still write them. But that little itch to write a novel kicked in. So I did. I wrote a novel. It was horrible. But I finished it, which kind of buoyed me a little bit to go, you know what, if you did it once, let's try it again. And so I wrote another novel, which I sold. So it took a while, but yeah, so, and that kind of, being able to finish it kind of spurs you to want to do more. And so that was kind of where I started, was that submitting and trying to get in and trying to get people's attention. And there were a lot of stumbles, and the first novel, when I sold my first novel, the publisher turned out to be horrible. They're not around anymore, but it was a horrible experience. But I had a book in my hand that I could still show to other publishers. So I started getting other work based off of having that book. And so there's a nice step ladder. I could sit down and go, this book, I got this one because of this one, and this one because of, I could point to those because I knew what people had seen, and go, oh, okay, we like this. You could do, this is very actiony. We do action. You want to do, So that was kind of it was very indie stuff starting for me. Very, even though I didn't realize the differences between indie and non-indie and any of that at that time. It very much was a small publisher's indie was kind of my foot in the door. And that's where most of my career has been. I've dipped my toe into like larger publishers a few times, but for the most part, my career has revolved around smaller or independent publishers, you know, or mid-level, you know. So yeah, but that's kind of where I started was, you know, I wanted to draw comic books. And I still want to draw comic books. I'm still not good enough to draw comic books for a living. So I've given up on that dream, but I'm happy to still write comics.
Well, you still, I mean, you write them, so
I do. Yeah, I love them. There is something magical about working on comics that I just love, and not that I don't love the other stuff, but they do work different parts of the brain. Writing comics is a very different feel for me than writing a novel.
Yeah.
And plus there's that excitement when you see artwork come in. I imagine it's similar to like when you write a screenplay and you see dailies come in for the first time. It's not what I saw in my head, but you know.
Sometimes.
Yeah,
that's not always the case.
most of my experience, most of the time, it has been better than what I was thinking. But yeah, there's that collaborative, seeing what the artists are gonna do, what the artists are gonna come up with, how they've interpreted what I've written, what they've come up with that adds to it, that makes us go back and go, we should tweak something, you know, because ooh, you added a little detail there that I hadn't thought of. Or a mannerism or something, you know, just like an actor becomes the character and the actor adds attributes to the character, the artist does that in comics. The artist can draw characters standing a certain way or leaning a certain way that adds an element to them that I might not have thought of that we can then play into. So I love the collaborative part. With doing comics, and so yeah, so that's big fun.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the creative brain and kind of changing gears, a lot of times with comics and screenplays too, is that the whole adage is you want the action to speak the words, right? You want to show, not tell, a lot more than you would in a novel, even though that's a really good frame of reference for a novel as well, because it moves the story. But in terms of like exposition and being too wordy and kind of, you know, being a little too nuanced with detail, you want the artists that you're collaborating with to have enough room to work within their own space, right? So I'm kind of curious if you find when you've gone back and forth at times when you've written a comic and then you write a novel, do you feel like there is a different type of not you, like you said, it runs a different muscle, but do you feel like there is a difference in you writing? Do you feel like when you get off of that momentum of writing an action and a dialogue driven piece, you find that leaks into your novel writing sometimes?
Yeah, certainly there's more brevity of dialogue. Now I know there are some comic writers that do it, but like these long, big, talky scenes between characters, those get pared down to the important bits. Because it can be very boring if it's just two characters talking for several pages. But you can do that on one page of a novel and it works. Or in a movie, you can have characters just talk for 5 minutes and it works. Comics is a very visual medium, and you can still have those type of scenes, but they can't be, you know, especially if you're doing an action type story, you don't want 5 pages of two characters sitting in a room talking. That just, and like I said, there are some who do it and some who do it well, but it's try to keep that down. I write full script. What I do is I'll write a full script, how I see it in my head. Here's what the dialogue is. But then I talk with the artist and say, okay, I wrote 5 panels. I'm not married to 5 panels. You're thinking visually. If we need to make that 4 or 6, great, let's do it. We can move dialogue around. Or, if I don't know the artist, I tend to overwrite, to make sure all the information's there. And then sometimes the art will come in and it's like, okay, we can lose this dialogue because the art gets that point across. Don't need it. So so there is a lot of that back and forth there. So, but I like to do the full script just so the artist has an idea of what I was thinking of them saying. It's also good you can kind of work things about, hey, let's have a scene where there's no dialogue. How do we do that? And then we talk that out. Or we're going to do a big fight scene. Do you want me to choreograph it, or do you want to just choreograph it in the art and let me, So there's a lot of those back and forths that we do to play to their strengths. I mean, I can write a fight scene that's like character A punches character B. Character B goes, oh, character B then kick character A. Character A goes, oh, I can write that. Or I can let the artist who is thinking visually, lay out the fight scene. And then I can go back and add the uhs and crash and So there's a lot of that we can do, and we talk those things out when we're able. It's not always a possibility, because I have worked with some people I've never met, never spoken to until it's over. So I mean, but if the option's there, I try to have that back and forth so we can, so one, everybody's having fun doing what what they're enjoying, and are able to put their best, effort forward. So so it's all about the collaboration.
How do you deal with the ones where you're hired to create, a story around a character that already exists, and there's artwork behind it already? Is that Is that a whole different thing altogether?
A little bit. I mean, anytime you write something that you didn't create, it's my job. Part of my job, especially if it's an existing character that's already appeared elsewhere, is for that character to feel consistent. It needs to, like if I took over writing Spider-Man,
it needs to be seamless,
right? If I take over writing Spider-Man today, he still needs to feel like Spider-Man.
Yeah,
he can't suddenly talk different or act different unless there's a story point,
Right.
So my job is to keep the character consistent. When you do stuff, and like when I own characters, I can do a lot of things to them that I can't do with characters I don't own. So you kind of know. This is the way I explain media tie-ins or corporate characters to people. They hire me to write it. So unless they have a specific agenda that they've told me, I want you to change this character. My job is, imagine that writing a media tie-in is Star Trek. Star Trek episodes followed a formula. Oh, the older ones. The episode opens, we're on the Enterprise. The Enterprise is flying through space. The crew is on the bridge. They're happy. Life's good. Some crap happens. And at the end of the episode, the Enterprise is flying through space. Everybody's on the bridge. They're happy and going. And that's my job, doing characters that I don't own.
Yeah.
I can kill Spock, but he's got to be alive at the end.
Yeah.
There's got to be a way to, put the toys back how I found them.
Yeah.
And so when I do stuff for other characters, or like company owned characters, or media tank like Zorro or whatever, I already know, okay, I can't kill Zorro. Zorro can't lose an arm. He can't get married, have a kid. These are the kind of things that those are not going to get approved. So knowing that, I tailor my stories to just tell a exciting story with them and then give them back. So, but those are lessons you learn from doing it.
Yeah. Have you? What's the most outrageous thing you've pitched to change in a character?
Oh, I can't really think of it because I don't usually pitch those. I don't usually.
You just go with the story they give you.
We had one pitched to me once. Sean Taylor and I created a character called Rick Ruby, who was like a pulpy. He was a pulpy detective in the 40s, and we had other writers were coming in to write stories, and we put together a Bible. It's this and this, and one of the pitches we got would have him He was going to get married, have a child, and then the mother and child would be murdered, and he would have to solve that. And we were like, look, as cool as the idea might be, there might be a great story in there. That becomes a fixed moment in time for that character. Everything that's a moment in time. It's what did this story happen before the kid or after? And if we're, and we kind of figured, as the owners of the character, if we're going to make a major life change, it should be one of us doing it. So when I do stories for other characters that I don't own, when I send them the pitch for the story, I don't generally put that type of thing in there. It's I know what kind of stories I can tell. And, like I said, the trick is just you're playing with the middle part. The beginning and end has to be what we know, the status quo. You've returned them to the toy box, unbroken, and hopefully you've told a good story in the middle. But unless the publisher comes and goes, I want you to make this lasting change to this character, that's not my job unless the publisher asks. Now, if they ask, that's a different story. But
I do want to follow up on that, but
okay.
I want to sneak Vanessa's question in here real quick. Is working on an animated work or series something that is on your bucket list?
I would do it in a heartbeat. I've not actively pursued it. But yeah, I would love to write more screenplay scripts that way. I've done a few short, small indie things. I would love to do that kind of stuff. It's it's all about storytelling, and though certain stories work better in certain formats.
Yeah.
And I have stories I would love to tell that would work excellent, animated or in movies or TV, and I mean they'll work as a novel, but certain things in your head now that needs to be seen, moving, and so I would do any of that stuff if the opportunity came available. It just those opportunities don't just fall into my lap.
Would you adapt what you've already written into an animated series, like the Snoke series or anything like that?
It would depend on what I was invited to do. I did some audio dramas over the last couple of years where the first two I did, that's what they asked me to do, was adapt 2 short stories I had done into audio dramas. So I did that. But again, it would depend on, what they wanted. I would be over the moon if somebody wanted to license something,
Yeah, of course.
Because like you mentioned Snow, in my head, Snow, I see it as I'm writing it like it's a TV show.
Yeah. I mean, it's very reminiscent of Bond and that.
Well, and that was kind of the inspiration, was like I've said this many times, it's my love letter to like the 70s and 80s PI and cop shows like Magnum and Rockford, and so in my head that's what I see is I see Snow doing all that stuff. So so it would be awesome if someone, but also a lot of times too, if someone licenses it, they tend to go, okay, we're going to license it, go away. Here's some money, go away.
Yeah.
So it depends,
Yeah.
I would never, I would never take it off the table, because I like to tell stories, and so any chance I get to do it is, no, but it's like I said, it's not something I've actively sat down and made a plan. I also, working in the Hollywood script part, one of the things that does impede me, and it's one of the smallest things, I live on the East Coast. Almost all of that writing is done in California. Even if they film it here.
That's not as big a deal as you think it is anymore, though.
They'll
let you in for 3 months, work on something, and fly you out if they.
Yeah, really I've talked with studios here where everything is done here.
Which you've got a booming market there too.
Yeah, but outside of Tyler Perry, none of it's written here. None of it.
Yeah.
And so you have to be there. Like I even talked with I won't say who, but I talked with a production company, and I was like, and they were like, we would love to have writers here. They won't let us. If we run into a problem, and because, Georgia's 3 hours ahead,
Yeah.
if we run into a problem in the morning, we have to stop and wait for them to get in the office so we can call them and tell them what our problem is with the story.
Yeah.
And so so it's still a bit of a, you would have to, and my real life situation does not make it easy for me to just
Get up and go.
hop a plane and go to
Sure.
California for months at a time. I would do it in a heartbeat if I could, but but of course nobody's offered either. So.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, but you're right. A lot of it has changed. I mean, we are in the era where, like I said, Tyler Perry's are all written here because he writes them all.
Yeah.
So the fact that he is here, helps. But like I said, most everything else is, even if they're headquartered here, the writers' rooms are still out.
I think the Georgia Film Commission is helping a little bit too, trying to promote that aspect of the incentives that they offer too. So
yeah,
I know I've looked at that marketplace before. They had some really good incentives to try and get filmmakers to go there. But you're right; it was never conceived there. It's just an opportunity to film there.
Right, because it's usually what they do with what I've seen, like even if they're filming here, the writer of that episode flies out to Atlanta for the week they're filming the episode he or she wrote. So they're there if they need anything. But then they fly back the next week. The writer of that episode flies in. They're there. So there's a lot of that. But So I don't know. It's one of those weird things. But it's not something I've actively pursued. But I'd be foolish if it was offered not to at least consider it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would imagine the money would have to be unbelievable to consider just giving up your property. But
well, I mean, there's a lot of that. I mean, what kind of rights do you want? Do they want?
Yeah.
I would be willing to license snow, no problem. But I'm not selling snow.
Yeah.
You can't own it. You can license it, but you can't own it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, unless it's a god awful amount of money.
You're right.
I mean,
change your
I'm
life.
not saying there's not a threshold that would make me pause.
Yeah.
It's there. It's pretty high.
Yeah.
But it's I'm not saying, somebody wants to start cutting checks with many zeros after it. We might, I'm no dummy,
Yeah.
But I'm nowhere. I don't. My books don't sell well enough that I'm on the radar of people that are dropping billions and millions and billions of dollars on properties.
But sometimes you do enough conventions, and you're very good at these conventions. That, I mean, it's how you and I met, and boy, we had probably a 2-hour conversation you and I did the first time we met. So you're very good at these. So it's just a matter of who you meet sometimes too. You could meet the right person, especially at like a Dragon Con where there's a lot of people.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of networking, and I get out and I meet a lot of people, and people know, people that know people that know people, and you work with publishers, and there's writers there. So you get to know so sometimes that happens where, writers, like I said, and creators, we all get to know each other, and something like something came across my desk today that was not right for me, and I was like, this is not for me. However, I have a friend that would be perfect for this. Let me introduce you.
Nice.
So there's a lot of that kind of happens. In the kind of the creative community. There is a lot of that where, people go, oh yeah, I know somebody that would be great for this if you're interested.
Nice.
So there's a lot of that, and you'll see that a lot too at cons, or I'm looking for somebody that writes science fiction. It's like, well, great, I know somebody, or because I also have realized I am not always the right writer for every project. I have said no to projects because I'm not the right guy for that. It's either I don't have an affinity for that type of story, or that genre is not my favorite, or it just doesn't sound appealing to me. And I don't want to I don't know how I could. I don't know what kind of language you can use, but I don't want to half-ass anything.
Yeah.
I don't want to put. You always want to put your best work forward.
Yes.
So learning that, and that was a hard lesson to learn because starting, it was hard to say no to people offering to publish you especially when you're getting started. You're afraid if I start saying no, they'll stop asking.
Yeah.
But it was a great lesson to learn that there's a lot of power in no.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, like I said, if you just tell them why you're saying no, you don't just go, no, it's no, here's why. I'm not the guy. This is not me. I can't tell the kind of story you want, or I don't think I could tell the kind of story you want as well as you want it. I'm just not the right guy. But learning that was one of those aha moments that, because when you first start, you think I can write anything, and I realize now that may not be the case. I can't. There are a lot of things that I'm just like, either I know I'm not good at that, or if the idea of it makes me go, ugh, that's probably not something I want to do, because you don't want to be miserable. You don't want to, I met a writer once who was writing a certain genre that was quite popular and sold fairly well. And I was like, oh, so we were talking, and it was like, I hate this genre. I'm like, why did you write this genre? Because it's popular. Now I'm stuck writing this genre all the time, and I hate it. And I'm like, so I'm miserable. I'm making money, but I'm miserable. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to be miserable.
That
Making
happens a
money is,
lot.
yeah. You don't want to. That's why they always say, don't write to trends.
Yeah.
Write what you like.
Yeah.
Because I've written things before that did not excite me. And by that doesn't mean you still don't put your best work into it. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's just like, it was a job. It's like when you see actors that say, I did that one for the paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you just go, this was a paycheck, or
And
this
then
was a favor.
they can't get out of it, and they have to do it 3 or 4 more times.
Right. Well, there's also, so because of the way it works, like I'll agree, like if I agree to do something today, it may be 6 months before I start on it. My excitement today may have won by the time 6 months gets here and I decide to start on it. And I'm like, why did I say yes to this again? But then you still do it. I mean, all that. But there is that little thing in your mind. It's like, sometimes I'm my own worst enemy. It's like I've had to stop working on snow because I'm working on this thing, and that kind of, but it's that's human nature, right? We all I love what I do. This is the greatest job ever, I think, being able to write for a living. But because it's a job, there are days I get up and do anything I can except the job, because just like any other job, I look for ways to screw off and not do it. And, I'd rather do anything, it's like, I could be writing on this thing that I'm really excited to be working on, or I could clean my office. How cleaning the office wins that debate sometimes is amazing, but it does. It's just, like I said, we're our own worst enemy. And really, if what's that meme of like the Scooby-Doo meme where like Fred's there with the guy with the monster, and it's like, let me.
Uh-oh. Oh wow, I froze hard. Is that me? I think Bobby froze. Yeah, I think Bobby froze. Yeah. Oh, hopefully he figures it out. But I like your comments, Vanessa. I advised an author friend new to publishing not to sign a publishing contract because it was a bad contract, and she declined it. But it was in mourning about it about it for a while, and it's a hard thing to do. Oh my God, yes, I always forget that I like writing, and so I'll avoid doing it. And then when I finally sit down with it, I remember how much I actually enjoy it. Yeah, right. There he is. All right. Hopefully we get him back.
Oh, I don't know what happened there. I said something about somebody that they didn't like.
Yeah, apparently.
No, our internet decided that this will be a good time to cut off. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. I was just reading the comments while you were.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, I don't even remember where we were leaving off. Where you?
We're our own worst enemies. Thanks, Vanessa.
Yeah.
Except for the internet. The internet.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you too about. So you mentioned, when you're writing somebody else's characters, you're following that formula, and you tend to stay within that realm. Does that mean that for poor Mr. Snow and Tom Myers, they get the brunt of all of the things you want to do to certain characters? Do you torture them just on purpose because you can and you have that opportunity?
More they have more things can happen to them. Yes. Yes. Anybody that's read Snow, I've almost killed him, 4 or 5 times at this point. And yes, so there are things that because I own them, I can do things. There are things I pull back on. Like there was one where I had, there was one story where it was like, killing the main character right here would be the coolest twist ever. It would also end the series, so I'm not going to do that. But but I can do more. I'm able to. Excuse me. When I do my stuff, stories can change. Unlike when I pitch a story to a publisher,
Gotcha.
and they've approved that plot. I'm locked into that plot.
Yeah.
I'll give you a non-spoilery. I'll try to be as non-spoilery as possible. In the first Snow series, there's 6 books that make up like a big arc.
Mm-hmm.
Each one's a standalone, but there's stuff that's going through all 6. I had intended for there's a bad guy that does something in the first chapter of book 1, and the plan is in book 6 that will be the final confrontation between the two, Snow and the bad guy.
Yeah.
Book 3 comes along, and what I do is at the end of the books, after we've wrapped it up, I do a little epilogue that leads you into the next book.
Right.
And at the end of book 3, I had one of Snow's friends, who was going to be part of the next one, show up, and we're writing this scene where she's helping him try to find this villain.
Mm-hmm.
And they find him, and he's been murdered.
Nice.
And it worked so well. And as I was writing it, it just kind of happened. And so even though there's a part of me that's screaming, well, you just screwed the next 3 books. What are you going to do now? A secondary character who had been in the books, who was not meant to be more than a secondary character, stepped up and says, well, you didn't know this, but I did that, and I'm the real villain. and I did. And so as soon as that realization hit me, it altered the way the book went forward, but I got a better villain because that villain turned out to be better than the original plan.
Mm-hmm.
So listening to my characters has given me some of those types of things. Like the Sheriff Myers, the fact that he has a series is because of that.
Yeah.
He is a secondary character in Evil Ways.
Yeah.
And I never intended to use him again. And then when I was doing Deadly Games, I used the same fictional town I created. And as I'm writing the story, this little voice in the back of my head would just keep going, this is where you should call the cops. To the point that I eventually, he works his way into that story. And then again, it's like, okay, I'll never use him again. I've used him twice. We're good. But the character just kept going, hey, don't forget I'm here. And now he's got his own series because it just took a while for the right story to fit the character. And so I try to trust my characters as often as I can, because they will take me places that, that I hadn't expected to go. They will give me better twists and turns. They're often smarter than I am. They're certainly more devious than I am.
Sure.
And so, so trusting them allows me to do that. And so the things that I do on my own, that I own, that I have control over, allows me those freedoms to, to take those hard left turns that I couldn't do if I was doing somebody else's character and I'd already pitched and had a story approved. Getting that changed takes a lot more effort, and sometimes it could happen, but most of the time you just stick with what's been approved.
I was going to ask, has anybody ever, when you submitted that, has anybody ever changed the direction on you and asked you to rewrite it in a different direction?
There was one. And it wasn't really a change in direction. I worked on this anthology called Zombies versus Robots. It was based on a comic book series. I didn't write, I didn't own it. I didn't write it. And we get the Bible, and it was like, there are no real rules about how the zombies have to act. And I'm like, okay. So my story revolves around a flooded area. And so these people are living in this flooded area, so they're safe. And so at one point, there's a log or like a fallen tree floating down this river, and there's a zombie has just been laying on it. And it's just there. And then, but it hears it. I've said, and the zombie hears noise. When it lifts its head to look toward the noise, he causes the tree to move. And so now the current is pushing it toward this settlement. And then we go, and so the note I get back is like, okay, so we have a new rule thanks to you. Nothing from the zombie's point of view. Because I had written the zombie heard something and lifted his head, and said, you can't do that. So I invented a rule for everybody. But okay, fine. So we rewrote it, and the story ended up becoming much longer. Like I ended up adding like several hundred words, and hey, I was getting paid per the word. So, I mean, it worked, and we made it work. But it was just one of those things. It was just like, we didn't think anybody would like do anything where the zombie thinks something or goes, ooh. So, but those are kind of things, you kind of fiddle your way through them, or, or sometimes you'll get something back. It's like, yeah, we don't think that character would do this.
Yeah.
Or, but never it's been, no, we would rather have the character go do something else than what you pitch. They don't usually do that, but
yeah. Vanessa says, what? Killing your main characters is a bad thing? Someone needs to clue George R.R. right now.
Well, there are exceptions to every rule.
Right. I was thinking, when you said that, I thought Hitchcock, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's not to say you can't do it. I mean, like I said, I killed off my main villain halfway through the story.
Yeah.
It's so funny. One of the earliest things in the Snow books, I was getting, you always have a character that becomes the favorite of readers. And I started getting comments about nothing better happened to Archer, which is Snow's grandfather. So I wrote one book where Archer is in deadly peril in almost every chapter. So it's like, that's right, dare me. So
do you like following your audience? Is that something, or do you like trolling them more?
I know, it's all good natured trolling when I do it.
Right. Of course. I'm not saying you're ribbing them, basically.
Yeah, it's I like talking to people but I'm always surprised to find someone that's read my book. I met two people at a convention over the weekend who'd come up and said, "Oh, I read this," and they start talking, and they have, because they started talking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. Wait, somebody read that. Holy crap. So yeah, I'm still stunned. I don't know why, but I'm still stunned that anybody if anybody comes up and says, "Oh, I know who you are," it's like, really? Or I've read this, so, but I like talking to people. If people come up and want to talk about the books, and I'm always happy to do that. And I've had, 99.9% of my interactions have been absolutely wonderful. So, but I've met a lot of cool people that, like what I do, or, or think it's cool, whether they read it or not. So there's a lot of people that think what I do is cool, whether they read it or not.
The interesting thing to me is, like, it seems like you do have an idea of where the end is in terms of the series itself, but often, like, the Snow series seems to be, you haven't written one in a bit, but I would imagine you still got some more ideas to go for that. And then Tom Myers, it seems like Tom Myers just pops up randomly once every couple of years. Are you
well, the plan is to do at least one or two a year of each. Other work gets in the way. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like Snow Book 7 is currently done and at the editor. Myers Book 3 is in production. But because because I do my own stuff and I work for publishers, when publishers come calling, my stuff tends to go, okay, I'm going to put that on hold for a minute. And because, I have bills to pay. I like to eat. So those are the stuff I do for publishers and corporate clients pays bills now. Snow is an investment for future earnings. That kind of thing. Or snow trickles in, whereas these others, it's we'll pay you this to write this. So paying gigs kind of do pop into some priority. And this has been a year, where I've had several paying gigs. So that has kind of moved things around, slowed things down. But yeah, I have a kind of ending in mind for Snow. When it's going to happen, I don't know. Anybody that's followed the series knows what's probably going to happen to him. It's been said, it's been told to him explicitly, if he doesn't stop doing what he's doing, this is going to happen. So that will probably happen. Unless I just, get tired of him one day and have him get hit by a bus. But but I don't, I have kind of those ideas, but then there are others where it's like, I'll do them as long as they're fun. There are some that I only revisit. I don't revisit as often as others, but the ultimate goal would be to do at least 2 Snow and 2 Sheriff Myers a year, and then alternate some other stuff. Because a lot of my crime stuff that I do myself exists in this own little universe, because they've crossed over little bits and pieces, and some of those secondary characters now have I have story ideas for them. So I'd like to maybe do, if I could get to on a good schedule, I'd love to do 2 Snow, 2 Sheriff Myers, and maybe 2 standalones. That would be the ultimate goal. Whether I get there,
I think it's interesting too, because I think you could be as open ended as you want with these 2 particular characters in particular, because the story is usually one novel, and then the next story is a different story.
Right.
You do virtually a standalone every time you write one of these characters, and so as long as you have many stories to tell, obviously with murders, there's a lot of room there to kind of just keep going and
and the real world keeps giving you plot ideas.
Sure.
So
does that is that kind of why you've just continued on with them, is because it's easy to do that in that respect?
Yeah. Like I said, I love the characters. That helps.
Of course.
I love you get to know them. They become real. To you. So they become like real people, and so it is almost like visiting an old friend. I just finished up the first draft of Deadly Deals, which is the sequel to Deadly Games. So it was nice to revisit those guys. I will probably do another Harold Palmer, The Evil Ways, Evil Intent. I'll probably do another one of those. sometimes it's just timing. It's coming up with the right story, or you know, the like Evil Ways and Deadly Games. Those are big those are big enough to be 3 snow books. It's just one story. So do I stop doing those at that size and take them to the novel? There's a lot of that kind of thinking that goes into it. Or do I keep them at the size people are accustomed to? Or so, and then it's just what story's there. Whereas Snow and Sheriff Myers, we revisit them often because they're novellas. We only get together with Harold Palmer or the guys from the Deadly books every few years, and so more time has passed for them. So so there's a lot of that. It just depends on when the story's right, what story's there, what story you want to tell.
Does everything fall in a literary fashion? Are you is everything that you've written before that in the past, and you just go forward from there?
Yes.
Oh, and all those.
Yeah, they're not. I don't do them in real time.
Obviously,
because there are. I just can't. I'm not.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
But stuff like now, because Evil Ways and Evil Intent were so far apart, they were originally scheduled to take place months apart. Like Evil Intent would take place like 3 months after. It came out 11 years later, so I made it 6 years later in the book, just because of just writing the technology. Has changed so much, in that span of time.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing like the opening of Evil Intent is actually in the past. And then we jumped 6 years later to, just because I felt that was, same with Deadly Games and Deadly Deals. It's a few years later. It's just been like 3, I think 3 is what it was. It's 3 years later. And so, so those guys have had a little break for a couple of years to where, someone wasn't trying to kill them.
Yeah.
And so it just, it just depends on what story and when you get to it and what works. The snow books, even when there is a break between them, they do tend to go fairly one into the other. You might have.
Uh-oh. Hi, Jamie, by the way. Bobby, you froze again. Fun. There you go. You're back.
Hey, we're back. It is just. Ugh. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's not raining or storming or anything. It's just. I live out in the country. That doesn't help.
Yeah, somebody's playing with the wires or something. Maybe squirrels. Squirrels are digging too.
Yeah, it doesn't take much here lately for it to freeze up at night. It's weird.
Yeah, I was going to mention that I had once met one of the writers of 24, and he told me what a pain in the ass that was to write every single hour of every single day and follow it, because you don't realize how much mundane stuff you do during the day that you couldn't include in there, but you had to follow like minute by minute, plot lines and stuff like that. And so,
and he never pees.
Yeah, right. Or or
he never eats.
Very, very rarely sleeps.
And I remember an interview where it's like, where one of the writers was saying that they had to go out of their way to make it so everything happens close together.
Yeah.
Like I think there's one episode where he has to fly to Mexico. So for like one episode, he does nothing. It's all the other characters doing stuff because he's in a plane for an hour. But everything else had to be a 5-minute drive from CTU headquarters. And I'm thinking, well, this should have been an easy thing to fix. Send the whole squad,
too, which is just crazy.
Yeah, it's like this one city block of Los Angeles. All this stuff's happening.
Yeah. All right, Bobby, you ready to take on the questionnaire, sir?
Sure. I'm as ready as at least until my internet goes out again.
Yeah. So this is the questionnaire. It was invented by the great Bernard Pivot, and then adapted for Inside the Actor Studio by James Lipton, and I have adapted it yet again. So, Bobby, what is your favorite word to write?
Oh, I saw a curse word. I was like,
That's coming.
Wow. Favorite word to write. I don't know if I have one. It was pointed out to me recently that I use the phrase "makes a beeline" often.
Okay.
A reader actually says you say that a lot.
Nice.
So I guess beeline might be a favorite.
All right. What's your least favorite word to write?
Occasionally, I misspell it every time I write it.
So, what turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
I just getting to tell stories. The characters talk to me, whether I'm writing it down or not. So sometimes just to get it out of my head.
Nice.
But I love the excitement of coming up with a story and telling that story. So creatively, and being around other creative people too.
Nice.
Emotionally,
That's fine.
that's a guy. It beats me. I don't know. Something I enjoy I enjoy a good story. So I enjoy reading a good story or watching a good story, and so I can get emotionally invested in those.
Nice.
Yeah. So
What turns you off?
there are certain tropes that bug the crap out of me. Just because I've seen them so many times. So when I see it in a story, it just makes me go, where it's just, that's low hanging fruit. You could have done something else. Or you could have found a way to do that differently. So I have a few of those that just bug the crap out of me.
Nice. Okay, Bobby, what is your favorite curse word?
Well, it's probably fuck. Yeah, it's that's an all-purpose,
Yeah.
It's an all-purpose word. But it's the one I try not to overuse it, so that when I do use it, I want it to. It's powerful.
Yeah.
We used it for a reason.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So,
what sound or noise do you love?
I love the sound of a good, like a car, a loud car.
Cool.
The revving of an engine, and that kind of stuff is really cool. Or that, or a crashing waves on a beach. That's just heaven.
I love that. That's one of my favorites too. What sound or noise do you dislike?
Whining. Anything that's kind of a high-pitched whine.
Nice.
And not necessarily, not just people. I like that noise. That just, it sets your teeth on end.
What character of yours would you say would relish the opportunity to have their face on their own money?
On their own money. Okay. That's a good one. Probably Snow. Snow has spent so much of his time in the shadows, because he worked undercover. He had to be other people for like 12 years of his life. So he's discovered now that he's having to be himself again, that nobody knows who he is, and so nobody cares. But he still has to be careful. So he still has to hide from all these people that think he's dead, or thinks his alias is dead. So wouldn't it be cool if I could just put my face on money, everybody would know me, and
Yeah, nice. What other artistry would you love to do?
I wish I could draw better. That's still one of the things that bugs me. I do love to draw, and I doodle. You guys probably, I draw on like envelopes and stuff when I mail out packages. But yeah, I would love to be able to draw better, to be able to do, so like I can do sketches, but being able to draw comics, being able to be proficient enough to tell a good sequential story, and I don't have that, and I'd love to. Beyond that, I'd love to play music. I wish I had any musical skill at all. I have none.
Which might go along with the next question, which is which artistry will you never attempt?
Oh, well, dancing probably. I have no rhythm. I would love to learn to play the guitar or something like that. I probably never will, but I'd love to. But no, I have zero coordination and zero rhythm, so no dancing or
Nice. Okay, if a heaven exists or some kind of existence beyond, you were to discover that, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I'm gonna make a joke just because I hear it so much here. When I show up, I want him to go, "It's the award-winning Bobby Nash." Just because I have so many friends that do that to me, and I get such a kick out of it.
That's
That
awesome.
it's become like it's a thing. Like it's cool when we do it just when we're together. It's really cool when like I walk into a room at Dragon Con and someone yells that. It's like, ooh, I feel really good, Yeah, so that kind of stuff. So.
You're the norm of Dragon Con.
Yes. So it's like, But once, because when I first won my first award, I was co-hosting the Earth Station One podcast, and Mike and Mike started, my co-host started. That's how they started introducing me. Every episode was the award-winning Bobby, and so it kind of snowballed from there. So, yeah, I'm a little egotistical if I refer to myself that way, but my friends doing it is awesome. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, this was a fantastic conversation, despite the internet problem. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that and hang out with me and talk to me as you've done each and every season here on 21 Grams. So I really appreciate that.
So we'll be back for season 5.
Yes, sir. Yes, I would love to have you.
I have a streak here. I've got to.
Yeah. We got to keep it going. But tell everybody where they can find you and where they can find what you're doing.
Okay. BobbyNash.com is my website. That's got everything. It's how I spell it right here with .com after it. Everything you can find there. My indie press is Ben Books, which is BEN-books.com. I'm on author Bobby Nash on Facebook. Bobby Nash Writes on Twitter or Instagram and Blue Sky. I'm Bobby Nash on Twitter. I have a Patreon page. I'm all over the place, but links are all on the Bobby Nash site. So there's always new stuff. In fact, we shared some book covers today from something that was just announced. So
nice,
yes,
awesome. Everybody go check that out.
Yeah, so
awesome. Well, everybody, once we're done here, our double feature continues. We will have. We're actually going to be doing a live role-playing game. Egg Embry is introducing us to Human Almost, and that's going to happen right after this. So go back to the homepage, and you'll be able to see that when it starts. And Bobby, thank you so much, my friend.
My pleasure. It's always great chatting with you. We need to do it more often.
Yes, sir. And it's always time to go in you now, and we'll see you again soon, everybody.